Okay, picture this. A completely ordinary holiday, sun, sea, friends, and then it just spirals into this absolute nightmare. An inexplicable real-life mystery that's, well, frankly, captivated millions online. We're diving deep today into the disappearance of Lars Mittank. He was a young German guy whose trip took this incredibly shocking turn, leading to one of the most famous and maybe one of the most baffling vanishings ever caught on camera. You've probably seen it, that viral airport footage. It's more than just like grim curiosity, though. It's really the start point for just immense speculation about what on earth actually happened. So our mission, if you like, in this deep dive is to sift through everything we have. What his friends said, that really chilling security footage, the conflicting medical opinions, try and piece together the sequence of events. We'll explore the main theories and really try to get a handle on why this case is still such a profound enigma for so many people, maybe for you listening too. Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this. So Lars Joachim Mittank, 28 years old, from Itzehoe in Germany. By all accounts, just a normal, stable guy.
Pretty unremarkable life, yeah. Worked at a power plant, had a girlfriend, good group of mates, close to his family too.
Yeah, apparently he was even helping his parents out a lot after his dad had a stroke.
Right. And what makes it so jarring is how quickly that sense of normalcy just evaporated.
Especially since this trip, the one to Golden Sands in Bulgaria, it was actually his first time ever traveling outside Germany.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? How fast a seemingly normal situation can just escalate into something completely bewildering. So he traveled with 5 friends. They got to Varna, this popular seaside resort, end of June 2014.
And for the first week, it was all pretty standard holiday stuff.
Exactly what you'd expect. Relaxing on the beach, swimming, bit of football, going out clubbing. Friends said he was relaxed, seemed in a good mood.
Okay.
There was one subtle detail, though, that a friend mentioned later. Apparently, Lars wasn't eating much, often just like a small bowl of soup or maybe a salad.
Okay. A bit strange, maybe, but not necessarily alarming on its own.
Right. But beyond that, his friends didn't report anything else abnormal, not until the very, very end of the trip.
And that's where this picture of a, relaxed holiday just completely shatters, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
The big turning point seems to be July 6th. That was the day before they were all supposed to fly home.
That's right.
Lars and his friends were at a bar, and apparently there was some kind of argument over football.
Yeah, a classic German football rivalry, actually. His team, SV Werder Bremen, against FC Bayern Munich fans. What starts as maybe banter somehow gets heated.
And after that, he got separated from his friends.
Yeah, after leaving the bar, they were outside a restaurant, and he just split off from them. Disappeared for the rest of the night.
Okay, so he's alone overnight after this argument. What happens next?
Well, he turns up the next morning back at the resort, and he's got this story. Claims he was beaten up.
Beaten up? By who?
He claimed it was by 4 men, supposedly hired by the group he'd argued with at the bar. Said he had an injured jaw and, crucially, a ruptured eardrum from this fight.
A ruptured eardrum. Okay, that's significant for flying.
Exactly. He saw a doctor who apparently advised him not to fly because of the ear injury and prescribed him an antibiotic, cefprozil, 500 milligrams.
Right. And here's a really critical moment, isn't it? His friends, they offered to stay behind with him.
They did, yeah. But Lars insisted he was fine. Told them, go on, fly home as planned, which they did on July 7th.
Didn't his friends have some doubts about his story? About the fight?
Well, that's what's reported, that several of them later said they weren't entirely sure if his account of the fight was, completely accurate.
Why would they doubt him, though, if their friend turns up injured? That seems odd.
It is odd, and it's a critical question, really. If we're trying to piece this together, it suggests maybe there's already something slightly off that they were picking up on. Or perhaps the paranoia was setting in faster than anyone realized. Regardless, this is the point where Lars becomes totally isolated. His friends fly home. He checks out of the resort too, but instead of going to the airport with them,
he checks into a different hotel, alone.
Exactly. A nearby, much cheaper place called the Hotel Color Varna, all by himself. And this is where his behavior really starts to change radically.
Yeah, once he's alone in that hotel, things escalate dramatically. That night, July 7th, he calls his mother, Sandra Mittank. And he's apparently whispering on the phone, saying
whispering that people were trying to kill or rob him. He asked her to cancel his credit cards immediately.
Wow. Okay, so full-blown paranoia seems to be setting in.
Absolutely. And the hotel's CCTV footage seems to back this up. It apparently shows him pacing the corridors, looking out of windows constantly, even hiding inside a lift at one point.
Hiding in a lift. That suggests real terror.
Intense fear, yeah. And he actually left the hotel around 1 a.m. Just walked out.
For how long?
Came back about an hour later. What he did during that hour where he went, nobody knows.
And he called his mother again.
Called her again in the morning, yeah. This time telling her that the people who were after him, they were getting closer.
Just chillin'. This raises such a huge question, doesn't it? What on earth was happening to him internally to cause such an intense, sudden shift?
Exactly. Was it purely psychological? Was there an external threat, real or perceived? The isolation in that cheap hotel room seems to have just poured fuel on the fire, whatever was going on.
So after this terrifying night alone, grappling with these fears, the next morning, July 8th, he makes a break for the airport, tries to get home.
His last attempt.
He texts his mother, says he's made it to Vanna Airport. He's hoping to get a flight back to Germany. His next step there is to see the airport doctor.
Right, a Dr. Kostov.
Then what did Dr. Kostov say about Lars's state when he saw him?
Kostov described him later as being nervous and erratic. Pretty agitated. Kostov apparently examined him and said, look, you're okay to fly home.
So the doctor cleared him to fly, despite the earlier advice about the eardrum.
According to Kostov, yes. But then Lars apparently expressed doubt about the medication he was supposed to be taking, the cefprozil. Kostov made this really crucial statement later. He said Lars didn't take those antibiotics. He didn't even fill out his prescription.
Wait, really? He never even got the antibiotics?
That's what Kostov claimed. He said he remained quite confused by Lars's level of panic, especially if the antibiotic side effect wasn't in play.
Okay, that changes things quite a bit. But then, in Kostov's office, something happens that triggers the final, absolutely shocking event.
Yeah, this is the moment everyone sees in the footage. While Lars is still with the doctor, a construction worker walks into the room. The airport was apparently being renovated.
Just a random worker entering the room.
Seemingly innocuous, yeah. But Lars reportedly just starts trembling. Then he suddenly shouts something like, I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here.
And then he just runs.
Bolts. Flees Kostov's office instantly. And this is the truly baffling part. He leaves everything behind.
Everything.
Like all his luggage, his wallet, his mobile phone, his passport. Everything you need to travel or even just exist, really.
Yeah.
And the airport security cameras capture the whole escape. You see him running frantically out of the terminal building.
Yeah, I've seen snippets. He's not just walking quickly, he's properly running, isn't he?
Jogging, then running full tilt. He climbs over a high fence, like an airport perimeter fence, runs across a meadow area next to the airport.
And then disappears.
And it sprints off camera into this adjacent forest, sort of sunflower field and woods area. And that's it.
That's the last confirmed sighting, captured on video for the whole world to see, and then just gone.
Vanished without a trace. He has never been seen or heard from since that moment.
So, okay, we have this incredibly disturbing sequence of events. What can we possibly take away from this? What could cause such a complete and sudden breakdown leading to disappearance?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? There's absolutely no consensus, not among experts, not even really within the family, and all the conflicting information just makes it deeper.
Let's talk through the main theories then. The medical one often comes up first, right?
Yeah.
The antibiotic.
It does. Lars's mother, Sandra, she strongly suspected this, and some doctors in Bulgaria and Germany agreed it was a possibility. Cefprozil, the antibiotic he was prescribed.
But maybe didn't take.
Exactly. It's a type called a cephalosporin. And very, very rarely they have been linked to psychotic side effects. Hallucinations, paranoia, confusion. It fits the behavior, superficially at least.
But then we have Dr. Kostov, the airport doctor, saying point blank, he didn't take those antibiotics. He didn't even fill the prescription.
Right. Which, if true, seems to completely torpedo that theory, or at least makes it much less likely to be the sole cause.
So if Kostov's right and the antibiotics are out, where does that leave us? Does that make the whole thing even more perplexing?
It absolutely does. It forces you to look harder at other possibilities. Or maybe consider that his mental state was already rapidly deteriorating for another reason. Perhaps the claims about the injury needing the antibiotics were part of that developing paranoia or altered reality itself.
Which brings us to, I suppose, the possibility of an undiagnosed mental illness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A sudden mental breakdown. Maybe triggered by the stress of the argument, the isolation, lack of sleep, being in a foreign country for the first time.
His mother said he had no history of mental illness, though.
She did. But sometimes The first major episode of certain conditions can manifest in early adulthood, sometimes seemingly out of the blue, especially under extreme stress. It doesn't require a known history.
It just highlights how incredibly difficult it is to figure out someone's mental state retrospectively, doesn't it? Especially with contradictory information and when the person themselves might have been experiencing a totally different reality.
Absolutely. It shows how fragile things can be, how quickly someone can spiral, and how a seemingly minor trigger, like that construction worker entering the room, can just set off a catastrophic reaction in someone who's already right on the edge.
And then the big question remains, what happened after he ran into that forest?
Yeah, the immediate aftermath.
We know he had some outdoor skills, apparently. Hunting, fishing.
He reportedly did, yes. But surviving long-term out there, it's tough. Bulgaria in July is incredibly hot. Without supplies, food, water, shelter, his phone, money, surviving in an unfamiliar environment, even with some basic skills, would be immensely challenging. Most experts are pretty skeptical about long-term survival under those conditions.
So, have there been any leads since? Any potential sightings?
There have been efforts and reported sightings, yeah.
Hmm.
His mother, Sandra, hired a private investigator. They checked hospital records, looking for unidentified patients matching his description, but found nothing concrete.
Does his mother still think he's alive?
She has maintained hope, yes. Believes he might be alive somewhere, possibly suffering from amnesia, memory loss.
And the sightings?
Mostly unconfirmed, unfortunately. There was a report about a year after he vanished. A truck driver thought he saw Lars hitchhiking near Varna. Then other sporadic reports from different countries over the years.
Anything more recent?
The most specific recent one was in 2019. A German truck driver reported giving a lift to a hitchhiker traveling from Dresden towards Schildow, near Berlin. The driver later saw Lars's case and felt the man strongly resembled an older version of Lars. Long hair, beard, tired eyes, sort of prominent cheekbones, but again, unconfirmed.
Grasping at straws, really. It's heartbreaking for the family.
Completely.
Yeah.
And despite all these theories, the potential sightings, the incredible public interest, the YouTube video viewed over 16 million times, making it the most famous missing person on YouTube.
The case is still cold. Unsolved.
Utterly unsolved. The mystery absolutely endures. It fuels endless online discussion, amateur sleuthing, countless theories, but no answers.
So looking at the bigger picture, what does a case like this tell us about sudden disappearances, about how fragile our sense of normalcy can be?
I think it's just such a stark reminder, isn't it? The contrast between the Lars Mittank, who went on holiday, the normal guy, steady job, good friends, and the terrified figure sprinting into those woods.
It really emphasizes how quickly everything can just unravel, leaving just questions, so many more questions than answers about what goes on in someone's mind, about external triggers, about the limits of what we can ever really know.
Yeah, Lars Mittank's case really challenges us, I think. It makes us consider how fragile our own perception of reality might be, especially when we're under intense stress or duress. And it shows how a sequence of seemingly small events, an argument, an injury, isolation, a misunderstanding, maybe a medical issue, maybe not, can just snowball into this completely inexplicable tragic disappearance. It also throws a harsh light on the agonizing uncertainty that families face when answers just don't come. For you listening, what stands out most to you about this story? It's one that certainly stays with you.